Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today on Masechta Zevachim daf Chaf Aleph. We are going to begin on Chaf Aleph Amud Aleph, about 7 lines from the top. Iboilahu. So we were learning about the dinim of the kior, the laver, in which was used to wash the hands before the avoda in the Beis Hamikdash. So on this, the Gemara asks the question: Mahu Lakadish Yodav Ragov Bikior. Now, typically, what happens is there's a spout. There's actually, according to later on, it was instituted 12 different spouts so that we could have the Kohanim washing their hands simultaneously without having to wait. But it had to be that there was a spout that came forth from the kior. The question is, can a Kohen actually submerge his hands into the kior itself, and will that actually constitute as a rechitza? So that's what Rashi says. Bikior is sheyichnes yodav ragel betocho. So mimenu amrachmana v'lo betocho. The pasuk says in its entirety. The pasuk tells us, this is the only pasuk on the Zamud, Barachatzu Aaron uvanav mimenu esidemes ragleihem, that Aaron and his children, the Kohanim, will wash their hands and feet from it, which means not in it. Odil mafil betocho. Maybe we don't have to be so exact in the language. So Rav Nachman Rabbi Yitzchak Tashma. O shetavel b'mei mara. So we mentioned what happens if a person immerses their hands into the mei mara, which will, like a cave, like to a mikvah, v'avad avodaso, and then they do the avoda. So we say psul. So that is not considered to be a valid rinsing of the hands. That's not considered to be the proper procedure. So ha mekir duma de mara va'avad avodaso kshera. So that could maybe imply that if we're dealing with the may kir, the water from the laver, which is comparable to the mara, to the cave, v'avad avodaso kshera. Since this is not maim kedoshim, but the kir is maim kedoshim. So maybe the whole issue is because it needs to be maim kedoshim. However, when it comes to the mara, it's not that case. It says Rashi, kir duma mara v'hechidami. How's it like going into a cave or into a mikveh? That you actually go into it, like you're going into this pit or this cave, so you're going mamish directly into the kior with your hands and feet. Now, Mei Mara is problematic because it's not considered to be Mayim Kedoshim, but the kior is Mayim Kedoshim, so maybe you could do so. Lo, Mei Mara it's Tzrichale. The truth is that you cannot even put your hands into the kior. So why does it mention the case of Mei Mara? Tell us a bigger chiddush and tell me the case of the kior. So the truth is, we need the Mei Mara as a chiddush. Shloi timer kol gufu toivel behen, that you shouldn't think your whole body immersed in it. Yadav ragel of lo shekain, so your hands and feet certainly you should be able to. Says Rashi. Maybe really you can't put your hands into the kior itself. So why is it mentioned Mara? Because says Rashi, the truth is you're going into a mikvah, which is, if you submerge your entire body, that's a good tefillah. Adiful he midikir shehein shuavin. When it comes to a mikvah, it's not drawn water. So a mikvah is more chashuv, and the fact that you're immersing yourself into it should be better. The kiddush ein kan, but tefillah ein kan. Aval hacha tefillah ika. Kamash malon. So maybe in this case we would think it actually works. So the chiddush is that you cannot do it in the meimar. So that's the chiddush. But again, maybe in the kior it's also possible. Rabbi Chibur Yosef, make kior nifsolin lamatirin kimatirin. So when it comes to the water of the kior, so it will passel just like when it becomes mutter. So during the day, for example, the matir is the dam. So it depends on what the avoda actually is to tell us the status of this water. So Zrikas Hadam, so this, of course, when you do the Zrika of the blood, that takes place during the day. So the Lina takes place after the day is over, by Shkias Achama. So if the Kir was not Shaikeya, it needed to be submerged into the ground, and there was this turn handle that you were able to easily do it, to move it there. Let's say it wasn't submerged at night, so it's considered to be lina regarding the matirin, and therefore it cannot be used for the next day's kiddush yadayim for that. So look at Rashi. Make here lefizman avoida shahakiddush sarch la havizman meim of livsol. Im avoidas mater who could go avodas dam. When it comes to a mater like sprinkling of blood or the kamatzim, the scooping of the kamitza, then doing the haktorah of it. You're not allowed to do these things at night, as Rashi says. So where do you know? Again, you can't do the zrika at night. You can't do the aktaris kamitza of the mincha. So make here nifsol b'shkias achama. Therefore, from the time that you can no longer do that avoda, that's when we say the make here is nifsol. Im lo nishka akir babor. Of course, again, if it wasn't submerged. Once it's submerged into the ground, in which there's water, so it's considered like bottle to the water underneath. Of shkias achama, it has to be done before shkia. If they don't do it, then nifsol meima v'kadish oid mehem l'savachas yoy machar. Then you can no longer use it for the avoda during the day. Skipping a couple lines. V'chein im shokul if neshkias achama. Let's say it was submerged before sunset. V'halehu b'layla. And then for whatever reason they lifted up in the middle of the night. Mikivan shematzu halayla sha'achas chutz labor. Even though it was underneath, it was in the bore before shkias achama, but for whatever reason you lifted it up in the middle at some point. So therefore, at that point, now it passels all the use of washing your hands and then being able to do the avoda with that water. However, le'evarim ke'evarim. So we know, as it says in the first Mishnah in Shas, it talks about hektar chilavim ve'evarim, that when it comes to the burning of the sacrificial parts and its fats, so it's done at night. So therefore, l'kadish behem lavoidis hektar chilavim nisom ba'omad shachar, because you could do it all night until ad shel omad shachar, as the Mishnah over there says. Kemo she'evarim nisom b'linas omad shachar k'dechsev ad boiker. So even though the kir was up all outside, wasn't in the bore, but you could still use that water for the avoda of the night, because it's not an issue until the next day. Once it's the morning and that's open, that is considered to be, from the morning on, that water is now considered to be lina, that you can't use that water for the avodas halayla. Of a kol halayla ksherim l'kadosh min l'avodas halayla. So v'im shiku koidem omad shachar, but if you put this make here underneath the ground before omad shachar, ma'at ksherin meim of a kiddush avodas hayoim. Okay. So evarim. So le'evarim is ke'evarim. Okay. So that's again during the night. So Rav Chisda Omer aflo matirin ein nifsalm el b'omad shachar ke'evarim. Also, when it comes to the dam, it's only going to be possible by the morning, just like evarim. Which seems like a pretty unbelievable chiddush, that it says just like the evarim are not going to be possible until the mekir is up in once it's omad shachar. So too when it comes to anything else, it's only told by the morning. So therefore, even when it comes to, let's say, zrikas dam, or the matirin of the kamitza, so the din still is that even though you can't do those things at night, but the reality is that even if it's been up, but it hasn't been yet submerged, but it's submerged before Amar Shachar, then it can continue to be used. Which again is a pretty large, huge chiddush according to Rav Chisda. For Rav Yochanan, kior, when it comes to kior, kivan shishaku shuv inum aleyu, and this is a little bit challenging what exactly the statement means. But basically it says that when it comes to the kior, once it's under in the ground, you're not allowed to lift it up. It has to remain underground. You cannot lift it up. It doesn't mean forever, but obviously it means for some purpose. So the Gemara tries to understand what this third sheet is. It's mashma that if, let's say, it's the middle of the night, so let's say before Shkia you put it down, and then so now you could use it the next day, but all of a sudden you lift it up during the middle of the night, so it's mashma that since it was up in the middle of the night, you can't use it. Now you can maybe think that you can't use it for Zrika because it's possible to do the Zrika at night, but the Hektar Chilav Me'avarim can be, you can sacrifice the leftover fats and limbs on during the nighttime. So the question is, how is it possible that he would say that would be problematic, that it would be possible if you would lift it up in the middle of the night for the Ivarim, that you wouldn't be able to wash your hands with that for the purpose of Ivarim. So, they said that kiyur shul shaku mibe'erev. Let's say I have the kiyur which was not put in the ground before nighttime. So so it's still up. You can still use it for that night. But of course, the next day you can't use it because it was supposed to be put in before. But the point is that you could use it for the Ivarim. That is still acceptable. So how could you tell me that once it's down you can't lift it up, which is mashma even for the Ivarim? But why not? If you put it up in the middle of the night, you should still be able to use it. So my inamaleu namid kaimer lavodas yoim. It only means that you can know if you lift it up in the middle of the night, you can't use it for the daytime. But you could. The problem sounds like a great answer, but the only problem is that sounds exactly how we started. Rav Chia bar Yosef's was the first opinion that we said that it's nifsol matirin kamatir and levarim kiavarim, that it's all totally on what time it was put underneath. So according to him, it sounds like the same thing, that if you lift it up in the middle of the night, so yeah, he's saying that would passel for the matirin because it has to be done. The matirin, the zrika has to be done the day, and therefore it'll be possible if it's lifted up in the middle of the night. That can no longer be used for avodas yom, but it can be used for avodas halayil. But that's exactly what we just said. So what is he? He's not adding anything. He seems to be agreeing. There must be some difference. So the Gemara says, "Ikibinayu gzeres shikua." The difference between them, and we'll get to a couple more questions in a second, is the gezerah when it comes to it being put into the ground. So a gezerah means it's like a durabanan. What happens if it wasn't done? So then maybe if it wasn't done, then it will only passel at osa shachar. So let's look in Rashi. Kloimer had oikim ein malehu, don't lift it up. Rav Yochanan mishum posel me'avodas yoim. What does that mean? Why did he say that? Shem lo yachser v'yishakenu. Because it's not because you can't use it for avodas halayla, for the Avarim, but our concern is that if you lift it up in the middle of the night, then maybe you're not going to put it back down at the right time. And then all of a sudden the next morning will come and it'll still be up, and then you can no longer use it. But the truth is that if in fact it would have been put before Mona Shachar, it would still be able to be used for the Avarim. That's what it doesn't say in the language of Apostle, El Loshan Isser Halo, don't lift it up. Shal Yigru Lehen Lifsel, because we don't want it lifted up, and you may end up forgetting, and you'll end up not putting it down, and then you won't be able to use it for the next night. For Rav Chia, however, skipping a few lines, was the first shita. He wasn't concerned of you lifting it up in the night, that maybe you won't put it down. Ella, the truth is rather, that as soon as you lift it up, it's automatically going to be usher to be used for the avoda of the matir, because it was supposed to remain in the underneath. So this is the nafkamina, that when it's lifted up, so the truth is, until the next morning, wouldn't be nifsal. The whole concern is that if you end up just leaving it there, then it will end up not being able to use for avodas yoyim. However, the first sheet says no, it doesn't. As soon as you lift it up, even if you put it down, that's already gonna make it no longer allowed to be used for avodas yoyim. Okay, let's see a couple questions. Question 11. Ma pirush. How do we understand mekir nifsol matirin kamatirin levarim kevarim? So we already said this. Let's see what he writes. When it comes to avodas matirin, for example, sprinkling the blood or the kemitza, so it's possible at shkes achamo. These things cannot be done after sunset. So the mekir will also be possible that you will not be able to wash your hands with it if it was not put underneath the ground before shkes achama. And that's what it doesn't really go more into that. But that's at least the first piece, that nifsolin matirin kematirin, but it doesn't say levarim kevarim, because levarim kevarim is at the opposite, is at nighttime. Mahi mitzvah shikua umataima. What is this mitzvah of submersion? So question 12, mitzvah shakua kior mibe'erev babor. It's a mitzvah to put it underneath in a pit. That's supposed to lift it up the entire night. Why? Because maybe you won't put it back down in the middle of the night. You'll keep it there, and the Amud Shachar will come. So only the next morning, not the night before, like the Ivarim. So this is the Chiddush, according to this Shita. It says that it will not be possible until Amud Shachar. But according to the first sheet, this says it doesn't make any difference. Once it's lifted up, even if you put it back down, it's still going to be nifsal. Because at any point at night, if the kior is above the bore, then that's also already going to be possible the matirin. However, according to the last shita, which is chayluk with this, says no. When it comes to, it's only alta gezerah, that if you lift it up, we're scared you won't put it down before Amud Shachar. Because if you just left it there, then will passel, because the morning will passel, because that's when Zrika Saddam is a matir. However, and also that is the time when the Ivar will have to be brought up until Amud Shachar. However, if let's say you would put it down according to that shita, then it can still be used, even though it was put up at some point in the middle of the night. So that's the nafkamina. TA 1. Madul Rav Yochanan sarach lishkoah hakir meboid yoyim. Why does he say you have to put it under the ground? So kadei sheyiskor, so you should remember lachsor, to go back, lishkoah la'acher trumas hadeshin shel yisul belina. Okay, I'm not sure if we completely didn't do that, or we didn't completely get to that. Fine, let's keep going. We'll see that before we move on. So V'yom Rav Yochanan. So this maybe have been the question over here. V'yom Rav Yochanan. Rav Yochanan says, Kiddush Adav l'Truma Sadeshin. If a person washes his hands for the Truma Sadeshin, which is the removal of the ash, which is basically done right before the beginning of the day. Well, Machar in Sarach HaKadosh, you no longer have to wash your hands again. Shekvar Kiddush Midchilos Avoda, because you already washed your hand for the Truma Sadeshin. Now, Bishlam Rava, I can understand according to the Shita of Rava. So again, we had 3 Shitas over here. We had the Shita of Rav Chia bar Yosef, who said, make Kiyur Nifson Matirin, which basically means if in the middle of the night it was lifted up, it automatically is posel for, that's why it says Nifsolin. The third Shita doesn't say that. The third Shita uses a lighter language of Kir Shalosh Shakum Be'erev Mekadosh Meno Vadas Laila. No, that wasn't his Shita, sorry. The third Shita of Rabbi Yochanan says Kir Kivan Shashak Shuv Enema Lehu. You should, and that's really just outside Gezerah. And then Rav Chisda says Afal Matir Nefsol El B'Mod Shachar. So going to Rav Chisda, he says that it's only Nifsol in the morning, even when it comes to Dam. So according to him, it could, even if the Shkis Achama came, it was never put down. It was always up, as long as it was put down before Mona Shachar, that would be sufficient. Okay, so fine. So V'yom Rav Yochanan kiddush of a trumas l'deshen l'macha and socha kaddish kvar kiddush mitchilas avoid. Now the bishul where Rava d'moikim lahi Rabbi Lezer Rav Shimon, so he establishes like Rabbi Lezer Rav Shimon. So ha karebi. So in this case, it could be the opposite. It could be like the sheet of Rabbi. Okay, let's go straight into Rashi. V'yom Rav Yochanan v'loy hitzrich lachsul l'shkaya. He doesn't require you to lift it up again, right? So we can say the kivan shimatsu mishaikeya. Once the Kohen found it was submerged, v'alein lifted up. The akshav higia hazman hasamuch l'paislo l'pashaba. He's not going to make a mistake because v'hadim mashakal. He's going to put it back in. El hakashalach doloi aribo Rabbi Yochanan b'mitzvah shikua. Fine. So Bishlam Rava says Rashi the Mukil El Hamilsad Rabbi Yochanan Liba Rabbi Lezer Diemer Ein Lina Mu Elos Bekidush. He says that Lina doesn't help when it comes to washing your hands. So he's not concerned about you submerging it. Except Rabbi Lezer the b'mei ki or gufayu now milu pasalina. It's not going to apostle. When he says don't take it out, they'll be like Rabbi Amra the Omer Lina Mo Elos Bekidish Koshkin B'Mekior, right? So that could be totally on that machlok. Back in the Mar. Elabai the Michael Amar Rabbi Kasha the Rabbi. So Maishna Hasam. Why over there the Mishakile? Does he say you have to put it in? Maishna Hachad Lo Mishakile. Why over here not? It doesn't say it must be submerged. For the gezerah that you may forget to do it before a los. The answer is the masalik le v'hadur mishakile. The Kohen takes it out and then he submerges it. So it was submerged already before the nighttime, and he would do it again, but it doesn't mention the second shikua, although it indeed was submerged twice. The amai. So in Sarach Kaddish, it just means you don't need to do it because it was already done. Well, remember, you come to tell me matirin when it comes to a matirin like the Zrikas Adam, Michsachazi, Hainu, that's fit for that. Hainu Rav Chisda, that's the same sheet of Rav Chisda. So Sikaminayu, mitzvah shikua. Again, the question is, mitzvah shikua, is it necessary is it a mitzvah to put it underground? Or do we say, no, it doesn't even make any difference because you have all the way until Mona Shachar to do it? So it says, so first of all, look at this Rashi. Mitzvah shikua. Rav Yochanan mitzvah shikua mebe'erev. It's a mitzvah to already submerge it. Kedei sheyimsu mishakua b'kiddush trumas hadeshen, so that it remains already submerged during that time. Ve'hei nizkar and therefore you'll remember to do it again. Behind the karma kivan shaka alma mibe'erev hushmishakele. You already submerged it once. Rav Yochanan lo hechmiru bo kokach ve'in mitzvah shikua el samach hazman psuloi. The only time you should submerge it is right before it can become puzzle. Koidem amod shachar. So therefore that's the difference. Okay. So then it says lo hayorainaiso, says Rashi b'mei. So as it's brought down in Masechtas Tamid, there are some people who get the honor of doing the cleaning of the ashes, the Trumas Hadeshen. Says Rashi, Kishahaya nichnas lazar l'kadish shadav. When you go wash your hands, lohia machnas biyadai lo ner v'avuka. You shouldn't have a candle or a torch. El mahalech l'or hamaracha. You should use the light which is found already in the base of Mikdash. Lohaya rayin oisai. So they may not be able to see so well because it's the middle of the night, but they're not supposed to use a torch. That's what it says. So then Siv Shaiman is going to hear him until they heard the sound of wood. Shasabin Katin Mukhnalakir. When they would actually hear the wheel that is moving around, that was the sound of what they would hear for them to know about the movement of this kiyur. And they would say it's now the time for you to wash your hands. Ma'alav, the masalik alma mishakele. It's you lifting it up must be that it was submerged. Lo, the mishakele, that you're submerging it. So either mishakele ma mishtama kali. What does it mean? You're hearing its sound. So mishakele begilgilta, you're just hearing the wheel go around. Lish nachrina the mishakele bechum rase. Says Rashi. My love, hi shmias koil, ha'etz, the katani is solik le lakir minabor, that's being lifted up from the pit. Al mim shakuahu, which means it was already submerged. So you say no, it's being submerged now, right? And you only need the wheel to pull it up, not down. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. Lishnachrin and Meshakele Bechumrase Kihechladish Lishma Koilin. You'll hear its sound. Lishme Velesi Ha Havi Gavini Karuz. But wasn't it that this person Gavini, he was the one who announced this, as Rashi Shaya Machors Amdo HaKohanim Lavoidasam, that the Kohanim should get up to do their avodah, Lavim Ducham Yisrael Ba'amadam. So wasn't he there to announce it? So Beitrei Hekari Havi, there's two ways of hearing and recognizing. Avdi the Shami Mahai Asi V'Shami Mahai Asi. Some of them heard Gavini make the announcement that it was time to go. And some people would hear the wheel that was being pulled and moved, and that's how they knew it was time to wash their hands. So it could have been done either way is how it would be recognizable. Okay, so again, now let's look at TA1. Why do you have to do it already before sunset? So it's Kadeshi Yizkor, so you should remember so even though it may not be possible at Shkis Achama, right? But even that though, we want to make sure that you do it, you put it back down when you do the Trumas Hadeshin, so before Moda Shachar that it was already submerged and not possible. So that's the reason. Which is actually this is TA1, which this is TB1 rather, which I thought was on the previous daf. So I wrote Gezerah imo osad zev lo shakeh b'shas Trumas Hadeshin yesh psul shel lina shel al hakir, which is not entirely wrong. Difficult question. Let's hopefully the next 30 blot are a little bit easier. Adkan.